I play an older version of Christopher Robin. When he's sort of a young adult, older adolescent, I come in towards the end of the film. The meat of Christopher Robin is played by Will Tilston, beautifully. And I'm sort of there to explain in some way the consequences of the fame of Winnie-the-Pooh. I personally knew very little about the child, Christopher Robin Milne, that inspired the stories, and even less so about what became of him afterwards. I think that's what we're trying to explore in the film. Winnie-the-Pooh, the stories, and Christopher Robin, and Piglet, and innocence really, and a sort of that part of our lives that maybe we spend the rest of our lives trying to get back to, having nothing to do but play in the woods, you know. And lovely to have the gang together and to see Damian and Margot and Will and Kelly. Yeah, it's always nice to sort of reunite.
Complex father-son, bittersweet tale, origins of Winnie-the-Pooh, the most famous children's book ever, but a story that not a lot of people don't know, so hopefully be a nice surprise. They do indeed. Donald's fantastic, has Milne down to a T. Margot, difficult character playing the wife, because it was a couple for their times, but does it brilliantly. And the discovery of Will Tilston, he's a natural, he's a dream. So very exciting. It's all a bit surreal because you never, it just takes such a long time to get to this place, and you never know if you will. So it's exciting. It's an innocence, a joy, and at the time, it was between the two world wars, so it was coming out of the World War I, so it became a sort of, looking back at an innocence that they'd all lost, and then it's just become a staple dart of parents and their children and growing up and reading and to put the kids to bed, and it's just enjoyed.
I'm playing Alan Milne, who wrote the Winnie-the-Pooh books, and it's the kind of complicated story of himself and his son and his wife and how they kind of battle through trauma to get to something beautiful, and I think it's a very beautiful story. No, I didn't know anything about the film or about his story beforehand, and it was all a surprise. But I also hadn't read Winnie-the-Pooh, so everything was researched and everything was lovely. It's a safe place. And I think that somewhere safe is a very privileged space to spend time, and that's what those books were, and that doesn't get old. That'll always be somewhere safe. Will always be somewhere safe. Will's a little superstar. I mean, he's also a lovely person, and long may it continue. If he wants to keep acting, he'll keep acting. But I know that he'll continue to be a lovely person. That's more important. I hope they experience something beautiful. I hope they're touched. A lot of people seem to go and have a good cry and feel good about themselves and good about their relationships, and I hope that continues.
It's lovely. It's really exciting. It's such a lovely film and good people. So I play this young man's nanny, which was a pleasure. And yeah, she's kind of the heart and soul of the film, really. He's a brilliant actor, everyone says you should work with children or animals, but I've had nothing but good fortune in that regard, and he is the best of the best. I don't know how he does it. It's like magic. I think it's just good writing. I mean, and that, people still love Shakespeare today. I think Milne was a tremendous writer. His words are very simple, but they get you like in the heart. It's a story I didn't know, and it's tragic a little bit. I had no idea Christopher Robin was based on the author's son and what his life had been like. But so I think it'll be interesting for people to see. it's exciting. I've seen the film once. It was a while ago, and it was in a very small screening room. So I'm looking forward to seeing it tonight. Lots of tissues, I expect, in order.
So I play Daphne Milne, A.A. Milne's wife, and the mother of little Christopher Robin, played by Will, who's absolutely brilliant. If you haven't already talked to him, he's amazing. Winnie-the-Pooh was, consistent throughout my childhood. I had a Winnie-the-Pooh toy and Tigger, and my mum used to play with them, and yeah, I always just took for granted that it existed throughout my childhood without really questioning its origins at all. So it was interesting to, explore that in this film. I think the stories are just very timeless. They're always relevant because they touch on such important themes. This movie kind of explores that and the innocence that it can kind of bring people in a world after World War I when things were a bit, the country was hurt and the world was hurt. It kind of provided that innocence people felt robbed of, and I think even today in these times people can find a bit of escape and a bit of a safe place in those books. It was amazing. We've done 3 films together now, and I just want to keep working with him forever. Hopefully we'll do one every year. I'm so excited. The movie is so quintessentially English. The sets were, everything about it was so English to me. So I hope everyone here likes it, yeah.
Yeah, massively surreal. We were in a lovely wood filming this in a very quiet place with all its birds, and now it's this craziness. Yeah, I'm really excited. Oh well, I come in and stir a little bit of trouble up with the family. I take an interest in little Christopher, so I don't want to give too much away. Blink and you miss me though, so so do pay attention.
What was he like to work on?
He's a godsend. Yeah, he's a real professional. I know. I was a bit like, I want to ask him some advice about my own performance here. He was really good. Really calm, cool guy on set as well. Yes, of course. Piglet and just the whole thing. Now I look back and it gives me such a nostalgic feeling. They're such emotional books, but yeah, they're really special. Yeah. I think because they're true friends. I think it's true stories of friendship, and no matter who they are, what they look like, where they come from, who their parents were, anything like that, they've just bonded and they're all trying to make it work in the same wood. It's beautiful. Oh well, I haven't seen it, so I don't know yet, but I've heard tears. But I think it's, but working on it felt like a really magical environment and atmosphere, and really incredible performances. So it's so exciting. Yeah, it's gonna be wicked. I can't wait.
It's the story behind the creation of the Winnie-the-Pooh story. So it's really the story of the family at the time the stories were written. I was just very lucky. He is a beautiful boy, and we had a long process, saw hundreds of boys actually, and I think we ended up with the right one. Most children, or most adults, have read the stories as children and then read it to their children. And I think also the stories are about innocence and childhood and imagination, things that are very important to remember in this day and age.
I play Ernest Shepherd, who was a friend of A.A. Milne. And he, like Milne, suffered to a certain degree from what we call PTSD now. And in the film, Milne develops a relationship with his son and starts to get to know him a little bit, and is allowed into his son's imagination, and then gives his friend Ernest a call and says, "I think we've got a story here. Maybe you can do some sketches." And of course, that develops and graduates into what we now know as the Winnie-the-Pooh stories. He's absolutely brilliant in the movie, and I have to say, because I wasn't on it for a huge amount of time, all I got to see was just this lovely kid who seemed to be having the best time ever. I've now seen the film and sort of aware that he's a real talent. He's fantastic. It's always a little bit nerve-wracking turning up and loads of cameras and stuff like that, but I hope people enjoy it, and they should do, because it's, in some ways, you can see with the posters and stuff that it looks like a very, very sweet British film, and it is to some degrees, but it actually has a lot of depth and a lot of value, and it's really worth watching. Well, something actually that struck me while I was making the film, and knowing that they had both suffered from PTSD to some degree, was that Winnie-the-Pooh is kind of like is often described as, you know, the bear of little brain, and he's a little bit fuzzy and he's wandering around, and there's something slightly informed me about Pooh's character, you know, by understanding the story.
Christopher Robin, he's a very emotional boy, and I describe him as two people really, put into one person, because he could be a jolly little boy but can also be a very angry and sad little boy, and I think the whole story is about how him and his father's relationship gets confused with all this fame, and it really is a beautiful story though, and it's about his childhood and how it's sort of sacrificed to make other childhoods better. That was amazing. He's such an interesting person, and he's really funny and nice, and it's a great first movie to be with him. So.